So this is an old burial book that I have at my job, and it is in really bad shape. It's from 1928. It covers burials from 1928 to 1933. As much as I love books, I love just as much, if not more, the art of making books and book binding. And I think it's just it's a lost art form. There's not many handmade books anymore. So I decided this is something that I really have been wanting to get into, and I didn't have a whole lot of materials to work with, but I thought I'd take this home and give it a practice run here. And so as you can see, I really broke down the book. I took the original boards off and separated the covers from the boards. I don't have a sewing frame yet. So, and the pages of the book are very brittle. So I was really afraid to break down the book. There's two different levels of book binding. One is just rebacking and rebinding, and another is archival book binding. So something that would be antique or something worth a lot of money, you'd want to do an archival binding. So technically, you'd take all those threads that you see on the spine there off. It's hand sewn, take all the sections apart and re-sew it. So what I did here was basically I just tried to align the sections up as best as I could and glued the sections back together right over the old thread. And there was an old piece of myrrh there that I laid on top and covered it with some more PVA glue, which is a bookbinding glue. As I said, I was really working with the bare minimum of new materials. So here I have a piece of white oak tag that I measured to size, and I was going to use that as my inner cover backing paper and my end sheet. So there you see there's one done, and then I cut another, and those are going to be used as the end sheet. That's actually what typically what would hold the book, the sections, to the actual boards. So you would call the book itself the block. So what holds the block to the boards are these end sheets here. There are other ways to strengthen that hold. But like I said, I don't have a lot of materials to work with. So I did the best I could here. And so here I am, I'm gluing the end sheets to the inner spine there. And there is the overhang of the myrrh that I had glued to the spine, laid over the spine. I folded that down over the end of the end sheets to give it a little more strength and durability. So I put the block here in my press and pressed it down, wax paper, so the glue doesn't stick to anything you don't want it to stick to. This was a real learning experience. I got a good feel of how quick the glue sets, how long I have to let things press for, how, just basically just working out, a novice working out the finer details. I mean, there's a lot that goes in. This is truly an art form, but I could get into this. It's just I'd zone out and just really got into it. I got a bunch of chipboard, which is actually what you would use for a hardback book, but it was not as long. This book has 12 and a quarter inch covers long, 12 and a quarter inch long. By about 5 and a quarter inch wide. So really I just happened to have a book press that I purchased a couple of years ago off of eBay. And unbeknownst to me, laying in there were 2 pieces of heavy duty cardboard. Not like a typical cardboard. It's almost like a press board, almost like the chipboard for a hardback book, but it was very thin. So I said, wow, look at this. It's great length to it and 2 nice size pieces. So I cut them to size, and I figured what I would do is glue them to the back of the original boards of the book. just to add a little strength and durability because the old boards really were flimsy. Here I'm removing a lot of the inner glue and paper that was stuck to those inner boards. Tried to get all the paper and glue off. I mean, there was a lot of stuff holding this book originally together. Duct tape and scotch tape and you name it. And none of that stuff is what you want to use on books, particularly anything old, because over time, I mean, if it's not acid-free, that glue, the glues are very acidic, and it just discolors the books, and they turn yellow and brown, and they really do damage to the book. So here you see I have the boards that I cut glued now to the original boards. So they really came out nice. It was very thick and very durable, very little bend in the boards. It really stiffened them up rather nicely. So I was happy with that. So I put them down with some more wax paper and pressed them and let the glue set. That PVA glue really works very well, and it dries very quickly, so it doesn't give you a lot of working time with it. Bookbinders use PVA glue. They use pastes. They use, I believe, flour paste or wheat pastes for certain things. Here I just laid the top of my book press on there just to hold it down. Now here I took a brown paper bag and I cut another piece of board for the spine, and this is how you hold the front and back board to the spine. There's a whole lot of measurements that go with this. There are formulas that a bookbinder would use based on the length and width of the boards and the thickness of the boards, so that when you're cutting these and you lay it out like I just showed you, the front and back and spine, you're supposed to leave a gap, and there's supposed to be a certain distance that you're supposed to leave to allow for the front and back covers to bend. I didn't know what those formulas were. Like I said, I've really just been watching a whole ton of videos on YouTube for the past year or two, and just learning from watching others do it. And this is, like I said, my first foray into actually doing it. So what happened was when I laid the block into the covers, it didn't fold right the way it should have. But I had to reverse them. And by reversing it, it fit perfectly. However, that brown paper bag that I used was supposed to be on the inside. However, I had to put it on the outside, where you see here I'm covering the boards. I'm gluing some material to it. I had some satin or silk material that I'm using for my new cover. And I'm using a bone folder to smooth out all the lines and creases. I'm not going to get the smoothest finish because the boards were not perfect to begin with. And if you could see that line on the right side there, that right board, that's the brown paper bag. See, that's why that's supposed to be on the inside, so that it would be covered with the end sheets. Another area, well, I should say another little mistake that I made here was I didn't compensate enough for the thickness of the board, so I should have left myself a little more material overhang there, so that when I folded it to the inside of these boards, I would have had a little more to work with. As it turns out, it worked out fine, but I like I said, it's a learning experience, and the next time I do one, I'm going to leave a little more material just to give it that little extra adherence there and little strength. So there you go. That's the new cover on the old boards, the old and new boards. So I placed the block into the boards, and you want to spread some PVA out on the inner cover here, the inner board. Like I said, this glue spreads. It's very thick. It spreads nice. You really have to work it, but it doesn't give you a lot of time to work it because it dries very quickly. So I attached the end sheets then to the inner boards. I'm surprised I didn't film that here. It's very hard to film and actually work doing this at the same time. I was kind of just taking video as I was going along, but I glued the inner end sheets to the boards and I put it in my press. And I watched a couple of videos where the woman that was the bookbinder that was actually doing it was constantly taking it in and out, checking it, because you are going to get some glue that seeps out. So you want to make sure that you have your pages covered and your wax paper is where it wants to be, because you don't want to get glue where you don't want glue. So I let the book sit in the press for just about 12 hours, and this is the final result. It's not exactly finished because archival bookbinders, well, see, if I was just doing this on my own, I would have just left it as is, which probably would have been nice, but just for the historical value, like I said, it's not a valuable book, but I love the history in my job, and this is just something archivally speaking, I wanted to take the original covers that were on the book and glue them to this new binding, just to have a bit of the old with the new. So here you have the finished product. Like I said, the glue is still a little wet underneath that canvas of that original cover there. You can feel the dampness. There's a lot of moisture in there. I had it pressed and weighted underneath a bunch of big books but I kept checking it to make sure that there was no seepage. And that's the finished deal. I didn't round the spine. A lot of bookbinders would round the spine. Like I said, if I was really if I broke the book down completely, all its paper sections, and re-sewed it and rounded the back, I would have definitely, I'm going to do that one of these days. They call it rounding the back as it is. This is more or less just a flat spine. See how yellow the paper is. The ends were very brittle. It's 1928. This book covers 1928 to 1933. It was the very first burial book that we have in our archives. We're up to book 80, actually. We just started book 80. And here's some more pictures. The original book, when I brought it home, you could see how it was in some really horrible shape. And here's the final product. For my very first bookbind, rebind, I think this was pretty darn good. I'm very happy with the results. Thanks for watching.